All right, guys. So, oftentimes, when you shift your views, people will point to that as like a sort of it's evidence of weakness because like you should have stood by your views. You should have just been right in the first place. This couldn't possibly be further from the truth. Again, if you just stand on every single claim you make, no matter what, and just fight to the death, it means that truth means absolutely nothing. It means that you're not defending your view because of it's more than likely accurate due to evidence. You're just defending your ego. That's it. You want to prove that you're smarter, that you know more, that you're right. That's your primary goal. And I want to use myself as an example in one particular instance. In fact, it's been pretty recent. I went on and on about my view on beating the shit out of bullies and how, and I stand by part of this still, that it's not bullying. It's not the same, I guess. If you're beating the shit out of a bully, it's not the same as the bully just attacking people for no justifiable reason, because you're doing so, at least your intent is to teach them a lesson. If intent is not the same, you can't call it the same. You're focused only on the outcome, and that's just silly. That's irrational. You shouldn't do that. But I have slid away from my view because I challenge my own views. No one, for me in particular, no one gave me this evidence or said like, hey, I need you to think about this in a different way. Let me explain why I think you're wrong. Like that didn't happen, not in the specific thing that like changed my mind. I went out of my way to research, and in this case, well, actually, there's several things I was incorrect about here. So my entire view was held up like the pillar, the foundation, if you will, was held up by the belief that, well, I called it negative reinforcement is necessary in order to combat bad behavior, right? So there's a couple of things. So I might get a little confused here because I made several mistakes. One, I'm misusing the term negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement does not mean I'm confusing that with punishment. Negative reinforcement is when you remove something from a person in order to make a behavior more likely. That's not punishment. That's an entirely different thing. I fucked up there. So there's one thing. I learned from this. I grew as a human being by realizing that I don't fucking know everything. That's not weakness. That's strength. So there's that. And then there is, I dug into the psychological literature on this. And after getting past the point that I was using negative reinforcement incorrectly, well, of course, that's not what I meant. I just meant punishment, but still, it's something that I learned from. But punishment, according to the literature, according to case studies, does not tend to work. It just doesn't. What happens is it causes them to fear the punishment in question, yes, and then they will avoid the punishment, but they won't change their behavior. So I was incorrect. So it becomes complicated though, because what means do we have at this point of combating negative behavior? So we know that many people, and I think I don't have evidence of this, but I believe that it's getting worse. that people are becoming sociopaths, so to speak, at an alarming rate. And if a person is a sociopath, like, say, someone like Donald Trump, you cannot change Donald Trump's behavior by appealing to their sense of morality, their ethics. Like, clearly, this is not going to work. So what do we do? At some point, punishment is necessary. Like, even if the goal is not to change the person's view, at least to protect other people. And like, I use this as an example a lot just because it's extreme and people can kind of understand where I'm coming from. But the analogy is pedophiles. So even if you point to pedophiles can't help that they're attracted to minors, that doesn't mean that they have to act on it. That's an entirely different thing. But it's true that they cannot help their desire, their wiring to be attracted to them. So even that being the case, if we have evidence that they will act on those desires, especially if they repeatedly act on those desires, they're given punishment and then they continue. We have to do something to protect other people, because it's not fair to innocent people, especially children, that they're being preyed on just because this person can't help that they have desires, etc. So in this analogy, we have to keep them away from children, lock them up, whatever. Like, some people would go so far as to say murder them. The point is, you have to do something at some point. So where is that point? That's the question. Where's the line at? Because from my point of view, many of the negative behaviors that happen, and when I say negative behaviors, I do my best to separate my personal bias from this, my subjective interpretation. Like, what can we measure that is just objectively true? And that is like, this person does A, B, and C. These actions we can measure. They measurably negatively impact people, right? Now, depending on the severity of those actions, you have to draw a line at some point. Like, sure, you can try at first to use positive reinforcement and to appeal to their better nature by like affirming their positive actions and like all that good stuff. But I don't think that you can eliminate punishment. I don't think it's possible. So the real argument is, where's the line? I don't have the answer to that. So in my bullying the bully example, this is subjective at some point, but for me personally, I was wrong. It won't work. So after being corrected, if I continue to beat the shit out of bullies, knowing that it's more than likely not going to do anything or to actually change their behavior, then what I'm really doing is acting like I'm making the world a better place, but I'm really just taking out my anger that they did what they did, and like they're the source for my anger. But again, it doesn't really change anything. There's no real positive. Well, let's put it this way: it's highly unlikely that anything positive is going to come out of it. And there is, again, and I acknowledged this before, there's a possibility that they're just going to take that violence and then they're going to be violent in turn, because violence begets violence. So it's actually going to make things worse. Again, all of this, all of the things that were predicated on this one false belief, it's like a domino effect. And this is why it's important to challenge your own views, and to especially don't shut out other people's viewpoints, because you are human. Your brain makes fuck ups constantly. I don't care who you are. I'm sure many of you will still disagree with me. You agreed with my old self, and that's fine. And in fact, maybe I'll change my mind again. Maybe you will present things that I haven't quite thought about, or data, especially data, because evidence tends to sway me more than anything else. But maybe you'll change my mind again, and I still stand by my claim. That's not weakness. When people go, "You're a flip-flopper," like, you're not hurting my feelings. That's not an insult. Like, if by flip-flopping, it's like a person that constantly changes their views, just not because they actually change their mind, but because it benefits them, then I can agree with you. But that's not what I'm talking about. The simple fact of changing your mind is not a negative thing. It's a sign that you're constantly growing, that you're constantly learning. You're not shutting your brain off. Yeah, there's still a long way to go with this morality thing. This sort of revelation for me with these studies has made it to where I have to, things are a lot less clear now. Like, there's so many things that are now open to further inquiry, and I really don't know the answers. Well, for me, I don't have answers for me on what I should do in the future in certain situations. It's a spectrum, so it's obvious. Some things are obvious, like if there is a person that's trying to like steal or like rob someone on the street, and they like have a knife, and they're like moments away from stabbing, and you can see that clearly, and I have a firearm and I can stop it, I'm going to stop it. And you're not going to convince me that's the wrong thing to do. Now, you could say that I don't have enough information, but I have enough. Like, you have a couple of seconds to act in this case. You do have some observations, and you're going on probability, not absolute, like 100%. That's all you can do. You don't have all the facts. I don't think the answer to that is inaction, just because you don't have absolute 100% proof. I don't think that's the answer. I think that you take the things that you do have, like in this case, you can observe that there's a person with a knife about to stab someone, and just for the sake of my example, it could be far more muddier in some situations, but let's say that you heard them scream, "Give me your pocketbook, lady, or you're going to die." Right? That gives you a little bit more information. In that case, I think it's perfectly acceptable to shoot the person, especially if it's easy to do so without endangering the woman. But that's just showing that there's a spectrum of, like, this is clearly a point at which, like, punishment or taking a life or whatever is okay, at least in my view. But there are other things that are far more gray. And again, I don't know where the line is. And I'm currently in the process of determining where that line is, and and it takes time to do this, because there's so many parts of, like, my former identity, if you will, that are being reconfigured based on that one thing that, again, is not on an island. That one belief that I had that was incorrect links to several other beliefs that are like building blocks from that foundational belief. And at the moment, I just don't know. That's not weakness. That's growth. That's a positive thing. So feel free to disagree. As always, feel free to disagree with me on this. I do ask, as always, that you stick to logic, use logical premises. If you disagree with something I say, make it clear what I said that you disagree with, and then use your words to describe why you think I was incorrect. Ad hominem attacks, while I really don't care about them, they're a waste of everybody's time. If you just try to attack me, I'm not going to take you seriously, and I'm just going to troll you at that point. And not to toot my own horn, but compared to most people, I'm relatively good at trolling. You're probably not going to go very far, and you're probably going to get offended trying to offend me. Thank you for your time.